Hi, this is Margot from Earth Mineral Arts, and this is a video for the making of a sketchbook with antique book papers. And in the first step, when you're working with a book that you've selected that has all the papers in it that you want to just be able to trim them and get them lined up the way you want them. You know, you take a ruled edge and you want to measure the paper for fitting within the book. Many times I sell these books and the papers are never quite a fit. They are loose or bookends which come from many different books. And so I've just been very lucky to be able to have these papers available. So you want to line up the paper and measure for trimming. Other papers can be added in or add ones or odd ones you can pull out actually, you know, like if one's too torn, sometimes it just got in by accident, but then I've left them also sometimes just because they add interest. Or they can be trimmed enough that it's okay. So there's that one. You can also trim with the chopper or X-Acto and a rule. Be watchful of interesting edged papers. Example, let's see if I have any gold edges in this one. These are books that are being prepared. Well, these two anyway are being prepared for the shop. And so like this one's been trimmed already. It has a book plate I left in there. And let's see what we have on the edges. Sometimes there's gold edged papers that can be really sweet, you know, for allowing enhancement in some way. Here's one. You can even gold leaf the edges of your papers yourself, which can be a lot of fun. Let's see, I don't know if you can really, you can't see it really in this light, but it's there. And so you can arrange the edges where you want them for greatest artistic interest. And stacking the papers and tapping to one side, you know, once you have them all together. Now, you may find that your cutter or your chopper hasn't really cut the papers as evenly as you want. And what you can do is, if you're familiar with it there, you can use an X-Acto blade, but bookbinders also have trimming blades for getting really smooth, perfect edges. Although I think in many cases it's really just as much fun and interesting to have papers that just are not perfect. They really are antique. So you determine the spine side also. That's really important. So once you get that as even as you want, then you have a nice flat even side. And you have a series of options about what you can do for how you want to bind it. Now, it's important to clamp the papers down at this point. And you can clamp it onto your desk, or if you have, any kind of bookbinding equipment that helps. A press is really nice to have, because then all you're doing then is just working with this one side, and then you're keeping it all really even. I like using portable C-clamps, small ones. Those are handy, and you can get those at the hardware store. With a wide, soft brush, you can apply a layer of archival glue to the spine side and let it dry. At this point, you have options. First option is 3 or more coats of Rublev archival glue, and then I use a 1-inch wide semi-sheer medical paper tape or pattern paper tape to give a final touch of stability along the length of the paper spine. I have an example of that here. That's this one. This one's actually mine. It's always a little in progress, but you don't really notice the tape so much because it's semi-transparent. But the papers are holding really well, although one can fall out if you didn't get it quite evenly enough when you were doing the gluing. Although I kind of don't mind that if one falls out. And if I want it back in place, then I can just take a little bit of glue and just tip it back in. And it doesn't hurt. And you just keep a little cotton tip or swab to just wipe off any excess. Now the paper tape, once you've got at least 3 or 4 coats of the glue on there, then you can place the paper tape on and you can trim it on both edges. And I always like a raw edge. That's just my personal preference. But you can do other things. So inside of this book, I actually placed an extra sheet, which is a full sheet for laying in with just a little bit of double stick tape, a 1/4-inch one instead of using glue, just to give this a little more stability, holding the papers in place. And I did that on the back side too, I think. Yeah. I always get that corner. But it's just nice to do, and if you want to loosen it up, you can. But the papers are old, and they have such interesting charm and just oddities that, the paper itself really is just lovely. Now, the next option is you can use Line Co's Pad Book Compound to the same effect as the Rublev archival glue. And you can even mix in a little color if you want something more like a sketchbook quality to it, or even gold leaf it. But it still requires, 3 or 4, sometimes even 4 or 5 layers applied, where you paint the glue on, covering all of the edges of the paper, and then allowing it to dry in between each application. Now, the last option is if you want the glue to be thicker and more like a sketch pad. I made this one as an example, and you can see here, this is just from chopped pieces of antique paper mostly, and it's really kind of fun. I just I don't usually get a chance to make these, but I'll have to take pictures of it and show it off in Instagram. But they're just cut off waste from doing many different types of applications and putting antique paper on watercolor tins. So that's what the inside is like. But on the edge, I used I lost track of my notes here. Well, to make it thicker, you really need a thicker type of glue. And what I have found is there isn't really any good, thick, heavy glue that you can use unless you use something like Liquitex Basics Acrylic Matte Gel Medium. And so when you pull that out, you'll see that it has the thick consistency, which is really nice, and you can add any color acrylic to it and use it just in half portions, half the matte gel and half the acrylic. And like this one, I just mixed from a raw umber and a flesh pink, and then I just painted that on, and it holds really, really well. You don't even have to put any paper tape on top of that. At this point, it really is all about you as the artist and being creative, putting together your own ideas about, what you find interesting so that your book is what you want it to be. And really, I think that's it. So I just hope you enjoy and have a good time trying it all out. And thank you.